Hey friends, family world, Luke here with another video. If you're new to our channel, we make weekly videos talking about different travel experiences that we've had since moving from North America to Europe, and more specifically, currently Belfast, Northern Ireland. If you haven't watched any of our videos before, be sure to check them out, and in particular reference to this video, we have an Ireland playlist that features all of our videos pertaining to our lives and travels within Ireland. Today I wanted to make a list of 10 of the differences that we've noticed between living here versus our lives back home in Canada and the US. Now, just a disclaimer, I'm not going to talk about some of the more basic things that are different that we already knew and most people likely already knew, such as things like driving on the left side of the road or different plug outlets, because we specifically wanted to focus on things that we were surprised about when we moved here. Not good or bad, just things that we were surprised to find out about. And some of them may relate specifically to life in Northern Ireland or the UK or Europe in general. So take them as you will. Let's start off with the first one, which is electricity. Like I said, we knew that plugs were different, but we didn't know plug outlets have switches attached to them. So what that means is that every single outlet has a tiny little on-off switch that if you plug it in, and if the switch isn't turned to on, it won't work. This is what plugs look like in the UK. You can see that these are both plugged in and that they have switches though next to each one. So even though our microwave is plugged in, you can see that it is not on. And the reason why is because you have to turn the on switch. And you'll see now that the microwave turned on. Number 2 is tipping culture. So tipping is a bit different in a couple different ways. One difference being that you're not expected to tip as much of a percentage of your bill, and you're also not expected to tip in as many different situations as you are in North America. Generally, the rule of thumb that I've been told is that tipping your servers is usually 10% if they do a job that you're happy with, but if you're not happy with it, it's not as directly frowned upon if you don't tip at all. Whereas I feel like in North America, even if you have a crappy server, a lot of people I know tip at least a little bit. Another aspect to tipping that I have not gotten used to just quite yet is the logistics of tipping with a credit card. So just for some background, I found that tipping with a credit card is slightly different in all 3 of the countries that I've lived in: the US, Canada, and the UK. First of all, in the US, when we tip with a credit card, they'll print a receipt that we have to sign, and there's a line that we add the amount that we want to tip to. Whereas in Canada, I find that they have these little machines that the servers go around with, and they bring the machine to each individual person paying with their card. You put your card inside, it asks you how much you want to tip, either in terms of dollar amount or in terms of percentage, and that's what your credit card is charged with. In the UK and Ireland, you have to be a bit more on it, because it's like Canada where they come to your table with the machine, but there's no option that comes up for you to add a tip after they've already entered your bill amount. So you have to tell them, let's say your bill was £10, you have to tell them before they enter £10, oh, can you make it £11? Basically telling them that you want to tip, and by giving them the total, you're telling them how much of a tip you're giving them. If you forget to do this, then you can't tip with your credit card, and you're gonna have to tip with cash, because after they've entered the total, they can't go back and change it. Number 3 differences between back home and here in Belfast. This point is specific to living in Northern Ireland, and it has to do with how deep the relations and perceived differences are between the whole Catholic versus Protestant dynamic. Growing up in North America, and I think most places outside of Northern Ireland, we tend to just think of being Catholic or Protestant as different religions and not much else. Whereas here, there's a lot more baggage associated with that. There's different cultural affiliations that may be associated with that, such as whether you consider yourself more British or more Irish. It's been getting better, but in years past, and particularly leading up to the Troubles, there were socioeconomic differences where Catholics were making less money than Protestants were, just for the mere fact that they were Catholic. And obviously, because of that, there were socioeconomic differences between who had the power and the wealth and who didn't. And then finally, more relevant to present day Northern Ireland, is more so just perceived kind of benign but funny differences that people perceive that to an outsider sound a bit ridiculous. So an example I'll give is that people joke around about how Catholics and Protestants are different in where they put the toaster in the kitchen, where Catholics apparently keep the toaster on the counter even when they aren't using it, whereas Protestants tend to only have the toaster on the counter when they're toasting something, and when they're done with it, they put it away in a cupboard. And it's just so weird to hear things like, oh, Catholics do this or Protestants do that. But after a while of living here, you kind of get used to it and you don't think twice about it. Whereas when I first came here, I thought, that's so weird. They're just different religions. There's no other difference. But I guess just the history involved here, people's perceived notions of Catholic versus Protestant are a bit bigger than we're used to. Number 4 is how much we stand out here. There's rarely a day that goes by where I am not fairly openly stared at when people hear me talk, whether it be on the lift at work or speaking to patients because I work in the hospital setting as a speech and language therapist. It's very common that people stop and ask me where I'm from, and usually in a very astonished manner of asking, what are you doing here? And why would you come here? And I guess I was just surprised at how few North Americans really come, even to visit here in Northern Ireland. Number 5, this might be a bit of a silly one, but I get a sense that people are not as obsessed with their pets as they are in North America. People have pets, obviously. People have dogs and cats, but I know a lot more people here that don't have pets than back home. Moving on to number 6 is mobile data plans. The things that surprised us were how cheap phone plans and particularly data can be, especially when you compare it to Canadian rates, which are probably the worst mobile phone plans that I've ever encountered. And then also, at least for the time being, in this world of Brexit not quite happening yet, or maybe ever, is how our mobile plans cover all of Europe, which is really handy for traveling because we don't have to worry about roaming or anything like that. However, there are silly rules involved with this as well, such as them charging per picture message, which is not something that I've encountered for a really long time, and I'm surprised that that's still something that they charge for in most mobile phone plans. Number 7 is milder weather. When we came to move here, we kind of had the expectation that the weather would be similar to what our lives were like in Seattle, which was really constantly rainy weather, particularly in the winter, but then quite warm weather in the summer. What we ended up finding is that we get some rainy days and some really sunny days, no matter what month it is. And the weather did not bother me nearly as much as I thought it would. Number 8. This is a really random one, and people may scratch their heads wondering why I included this in a top 10 list of differences, but I just found it so intriguing and interesting that I wanted to include it, and that is that eggs are not refrigerated here in Europe, whereas eggs are refrigerated in the US and Canada. Number 9, just small differences about public transit. Obviously varies from city to city, but for Belfast, I found it interesting that buses actually give you change, whereas I'm used to most cities requiring you to have exact change to use the bus. And then in London, it's really cool in that you can use your debit card to use public transit. You just tap it and it charges you whatever amount needs to be charged. And finally, really random little factoid that surprised us when we moved here is that windows don't have screens. See, no screen. Even our skylights open and don't have screens. Isn't that crazy? All right, guys, so that is it for my list of 10 differences between North America and Northern Ireland / UK Ireland / Europe. What do you think of my list? For anyone in a similar situation, were there things that surprised you about moving from North America to Europe? Or vice versa, are there Europeans out there that have moved to the US or Canada that were surprised about the ways that we do things? Let me know in the comments down below. And I will see you guys next time at our next video. Thanks, have a great day, bye.